Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Hope you had a great weekend. Okay, the beginning of the week, which is just about a day or 2 days away from Wednesday, when NLC had, stated that it would be calling out an all-out strike. Well, our guest this morning is a public affairs analyst. He's the former Commissioner for Information and Strategy in Adamawa State, Honorable Ahmed Sajo. A fine morning to you, Honorable Sajo.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good to have me here.
Yes, thank you very much for making the time for us. Before we come to begin our conversation, maybe we should first of all put out a package that, one of our senior reporters made with TUC meets with the federal government on fuel subsidy. That was yesterday, as you know. So let's take that report and then come back to studio and discuss issues leading towards Wednesday and what can be done before then.
Leaders of the Trade Union Congress arrived for a crucial meeting with the federal government over the removal of fuel subsidies. This time, discussions between the federal government and the Trade Union Congress are fruitful, but still inconclusive, as further talks will continue on Tuesday. But the Trade Union Congress succeeded in putting a list of demands on the table for consideration by the federal government. The topmost of these demands is an increase in the national minimum wage.
Yes, the demands are so long, there are so many. There are so many. Part of it was the demand for a minimum wage. And we stated that for us, it is quite apt that the minimum wage today is not a living wage, as we all know. The value of the minimum wage since it was negotiated has plummeted to a very abysmal level as it is today. So we've, and topmost in our demand was clearly stated as well that for utmost good faith and in the interest of social dialogue, that they should revert back the pump price while discussion continues.
The federal government understands the consequence of a failure to meet the demands of the labor unions and has continued to hold talks. The demands of the Trade Union Congress will be presented to President Bola Tinubu as the federal government hopes to ward off a looming workers' strike.
Most important top priority on the list, which the government is also looking at very seriously, and the president has announced before, is the issue of the minimum wage, which the labor movement has demanded as a consequence of this removal of the consequential impact of the removal of subsidy. So government is looking at that, and Mr. President is most likely going to constitute a tripartite committee. That is the committee of federal government and including the states, then the organized labor on the other part, and the private sector. Now, this is a tripartite arrangement. It will be a committee that will study all the dynamics of a wage increase, the percentages, the numbers, and the categories that will be affected. So by Tuesday, when we come back to reconvene and meet with the TUC again, the labor movement, we should have very concrete items to present to the world.
President Tinubu and the Trade Union Congress seem to be on the same page regarding the increase in the national minimum wage. Still, the other demands presented for approval will determine how organized labor and the federal government will walk the tightrope of the removal of fuel subsidy. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
Okay, so as I said, in case you hadn't joined us at the time, our guest this morning is Honorable Ahmed Sajo. Honorable Sajo is a public affairs analyst and He was the former Commissioner for Information and Strategy in Adamawa State. Okay, over to you now. The first thing that one notices is that when this meeting between the federal government and Labour first happened, NLC was in attendance. But this time now, NLC wasn't there, but the TUC was there. Well, as the gentleman did say there, comes down to two matters, minimum wage review and a return to the status quo of the former pump price. Let me ask you, first of all, what do you think about NLC not being in attendance this time around? Because that was what was flagged the last time we were briefed, that come Sunday, which was yesterday, there'll be another meeting.
Well, thank you very much. Let me clarify one issue. I was an active labor leader. I understand the process of the labor movement. Part of the reason why we have the labor movement at all in the world is because of collective bargaining. And when a labor movement, loses a chance to sit down on table and bargain with employers, I think that labor leadership is not serving the interests of workers or the labor movement. I think that labor leadership is serving an interest that is outside the norms of the labor movement. But be that as it may, let us accept one very, very important fact, that the minimum wage in Nigeria, or the wage that is paid to an average worker in Nigeria, is actually very, very dismal. But again, it's like the chicken and the egg. Which one comes first? You tie a lot of resources that you're supposed to use to even improve the minimum wage in paying for a subsidy that benefits only a few people in the country. And then the leadership of the country is saying, look, free these funds, let it go to the 3 tiers of government so it can be used for other development purposes, including improving the living wage available to the workers. I think workers leadership should take that as the most important and the most appropriate. I am wondering, one of the sectors of our economy whose minimum wage is way, way, way higher than the national minimum wage, which is the oil sector. What is the benefit of the high wages that they receive? For the past 20 years or thereabout or more, we have 4 refineries. Each year we pay salaries to workers of those refineries. We pay for turnaround maintenance of those refineries, and those refineries are not functioning. We're just paying wages to people who were not questioning their productivity. What are they giving the nation in return? I mean, if this whole subsidy regime has remained perpetually lingering because we have been unable to provide the PMS that we require as a people. It's a drain on our foreign exchange. It's a drain on our scarce resources. It's something that bleeds the nation into the pockets of a few people. And we are saying, look, stop it. Let us channel these resources to something more reasonable. And let the workers who are talking about workers' interests also remember that they ought to have been productive. They ought to have questioned quite a number of these things that are happening. Anytime, we have a scam within the fuel subsidy regime, like we saw yesterday that a competent court of law somebody is before a competent court of law for receiving subsidy for fuel not delivered. Anytime this happens, the documentation is done by workers who are now complaining that we should stop. Are we going to stop this subsidy regime, removing the subsidy regime, so that we can continue to enrich those that are really actually bleeding this nation dry? I think we should have a rethink. The labor movement should come to the table, discuss with their employers, discuss with government, discuss, in a manner of collective bargaining that is within the confines of the labor laws, so that we can make progress as a nation. We need to review this, the minimum wage. We need to talk about a viable transport system. Even here in Abuja where we are, you know, we do not have a transport system that is viable and functioning, that could make movement easy. We need to discuss, you know, like the president said, we need to discuss multiple taxation. If we're talking about workers, what of petty traders? What of ordinary people within the economy who are actually struggling to make a living? How do we assist them? How do we reduce their burden? As we increase staff salaries, we should also think of decreasing the burden of ordinary people who are not workers, but who are contributing to the economy. And the president had already taken the first step. He had agreed that he would that the minimum wage needs to be addressed. He has also agreed that multiple taxation to people within the economy would be addressed so that they can have some succor. He has agreed that they will put some palliative on ground to make sure that they ameliorate the hardships occasioned by the removal of subsidy, but that the removal of subsidy is a necessity so that we can free funds that are going into the pockets of a few people for the majority of the people to benefit, including the workers themselves. So I think it's an opportunity for them to come to the table and discuss with the president dispassionately.
Indeed. And as you know, frustrations as Labour's holding fast to its position, which is that, first of all, you must go back to where we were before. Before this, you know, gigantic increase. That's one of their demands. And people are now, as you know, have been reminding them that, look, every single presidential aspirant asserted that it would be first order of business if they won the election. And Labour, there are those who are now accusing Labour of perhaps it's not entirely about the Nigerian worker. Perhaps they're also being political. Now, that's an allegation, which I've heard the president of NLC poo-poo, that is not the way it is. But he has said that federal government seems to be trying to negotiate with a gun to our head, was the colorful way he put it, meaning that it had been done, the deed had been done, and then you say we should talk. And this is where I think they have the biggest problem. And then also that in their understanding, according to Labour, NLC especially has said so, they had the notion that there was no provision in the budget for subsidy, so there would be no subsidy, you know, from June. Now, that it started on the 1st of June, I have heard the Labour, you know, president say that we had all of the 4 weeks of June, and then towards the end of June, we could then come out of it. What do you think of those positions that he's making, especially that about the beginning of June is not quite the same thing as the end of June?
I think there is no better time to do the right thing. At any point in time, you realize that this is the right thing to do. That's the time to do it. Let's understand one thing. We were all here in Nigeria, including the workers and the labor leaders, during the campaigns leading to this election that ushered in a new government. All the 4 leading presidential candidates, including the presidential candidate of the Labour Party that was fully supported by the leadership of the labor movement, had agreed, had said publicly that on the very first day they come to office, which is 29th May 2023, that they will remove the fuel subsidy because it is bleeding the nation. Everybody agrees on that. And with every vote that is cast to these 4 leading, in fact, including my brother Showore, every vote that has been cast to this presidential candidate was cast on the basis that if they win this election, they will remove the subsidy. Most of them said on the very first day that they will be sworn in. So there is nothing, we knew this was coming. We were ready for it. There is no budgetary provision on it. The budget process went through the National Assembly. There were public hearings. There were clear indications that there was no provision for subsidy in the budget. Nobody said, look, as a labor movement, unless you put subsidy, budgetary allocation for subsidy, we will go on strike. They allowed it to pass. Then it's at this level you are telling Nigerians that no, it should not happen. I think what we lacked all along that made this fraudulent subsidy regime to succeed was that there was no political will to end it. Now that we have a president that has found sufficient political will to end the subsidy, I think let us arrest it. Let us use the resources to do some other things. From most of the statistics, especially from NETI, that is credible, what we are spending on subsidy is far higher than what we are spending in core issues like education and health. It cannot be allowed to happen like that. The progress of this country should not be tied to feeding a few individuals with subsidy regimes. I tell people, and I say it with all sense of responsibility, I come from a part of Nigeria where we never even bought this fuel at the subsidized price. Ask anybody that comes from my own side of the country. We never bought it. We've always bought it twice or more the price that is paid, that is said to be the controlled price. I come from a place where I sit down and I see this fuel moving from Nigeria into a neighboring country where I have relations, friends, and people I visit. I go there. I see Nigerian fuel in dumps being sold in the street. And I realized that we're paying subsidy for people to smuggle this fuel out to other countries and sell at the same price now that we are crying. I think it doesn't make sense. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let us look. We can cushion the impact rather than begin to talk about returning back to the old regime. Let us find a way. Since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had found sufficient political will to address this issue, let him also address other issues. Like how come that within a period that our 4 refineries that were already established have remained comatose, gulping money for yearly turnaround maintenance and payment of staff. Dangote has built a refinery that is ready to go on stream by July. How come? How come that BUA is building a refinery in Akwa Ibom State, and that refinery will soon also be on stream, while we still have refineries that are already built in this country are lying comatose and gulping money? Every year you hear of turnaround maintenance. How can you maintain a car that is not moving? How can you maintain a driver, a commercial driver that is not on the road with his vehicle? This is what we are facing. So please, Labour should be patriotic enough to understand that this is not an issue about ego. It's not about individuals. It's not about politics. It's about the country. And it's about the country. We need to free these resources, move these resources into more productive ventures, including improving the welfare of our workers, paying pensioners their pensions, paying the gratuities, paying workers their salaries as at when due, increasing the quantum of salary, reducing tax burdens on ordinary Nigerians, providing avenues for people to be productive, increasing the productive capacity of the agri sector, increasing the management of the agriculture value chain so that a lot of people will benefit from the agriculture value chain. There are a lot of other things. Manufacturing will improve. We need to face reality. The next thing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should do for Nigerians is improve electricity. Once there is adequate electricity supply, a lot of other productive engagement will take place, and then people will begin to earn, people will begin to become wealthier. We will be able to address the excruciating poverty that is in the land, and that is the only thing. When your expenditure, for example, increases, it should be an impetus for you to improve in your productive output, so that at the end of the day you balance, the shortfall. And the productive output of the worker is that the payment for his labor, that is the salaries and wages, should also be increased. Beyond increasing wages and salaries, government must come up with innovative ways to also increase the welfare packages available to workers who are actually genuinely, the engine room of governance. We move from this to that. But going back to the old regime, where a few people are making millions of naira and a lot of the rest of us are becoming increasingly poor, should at least not subsist. And labor that is supposed to stand on the side of the people should be the first to say, no, we cannot continue to feed a tiny percentage of the country at the expense of the greater majority. That should not be acceptable to anybody.
And all of these, thank you very much, Honorable Sergio, because all of these things that you've said, I believe were also, discussed at the two meetings. But Labour, being what it is, I suppose they're going to have to reach out to Labour because Mr. Dele Alake, who was on the federal government side in this particular meetings, had said that, look, not so much palliatives, but there would definitely be interventions, and whatever it is called, all the things that you've spoken about just now, from reviewing the minimum wage, removing double taxation or multiple taxation, and all of these things. Surely Labour understands that. Now, I don't even believe that Labour itself wants the subsidy regime to continue. But then their actions, that is why some people are now beginning to say that, are you sure that this doesn't go beyond Labour? Are you not inadvertently stepping into the political realm? And we're done with politicking. We're done with campaigning. Now people have to come around and do what you've just said. Think of Nigeria. But for the moment, the fact that NLC did not show up at yesterday's meeting was a bit worrying. I suppose the federal government has to keep on reaching out to them because today is Monday. They are threatening Wednesday and they are mobilizing for Wednesday. So they're going to meet again tomorrow. One just hopes that Labour will see its way to seeing it from this point of view, which would have been Labour's position if all other things had been equal, let it be said. But for the moment, the fact that Mr. Ajero and NLC didn't show up yesterday, I heard him on a different interview say, what is there to discuss? It's like if you won't do anything to the minimum wage immediately, which you have just said, and Dele Alake had said earlier was topmost on the president's mind, if that is not done, there's nothing for him to discuss. That seems to leave us in a very constricted space. But federal government has to keep on reaching out to Labour?
No, I think there's nothing complicated there. I said under the labor law, one of the reasons why we have the labor movement in the whole world is to enable workers have a platform through which they can engage in collective bargaining with their employers. It's not, the labor movement is not, institutionalized so that labor leaders or the unions can be in an antagonistic position towards government or their employers. It is a platform for them to have a means of collective bargaining. Since it is not going to be possible for the employer to talk to all the workers all the time, it's just like our relationship as a country with other countries. When our leaders, elected leaders, presidents, parliamentarians, ministers, and the rest, go out to go and talk to other leaders in the world, they're talking on our behalf.
Indeed.
It's because
one moment,
it's
sir.
not possible for all of our population to go and talk.
Okay, one moment, please. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Mr. Adeshola has called in and has been waiting for quite a while in Ikorodu. Good morning, Mr. Adeshola. Well, I'm afraid, I'm so sorry, I just lost him. But you were making the point, Honorable Sergio, about these opportunities come from time to time. Yes, please continue.
It happens No matter what happens, my brother, labor leaders should seize every available opportunity to sit down round table with their employers. They are not doing it for themselves. They are doing it on behalf of the workers. The more they keep away, two things are likely going to happen. And I will tell you that both are not going to be in the interest of labor. One is that if they continue to keep away, they are denying the workers an opportunity of having a voice at the point at which they are, the future, the welfare, and the interests of the workers are being discussed. That in itself is a negation of the oath they took as leaders of the workers. Second is that at the worst case scenario is that there will be rebellion, within their ranks. And once there is rebellion within their ranks, they lose more rather than their employer. So we must be tactful. We must be diplomatic. We must accept every opportunity to engage with our employers. Government is not engaging them as an overload. Government is engaging workers as an employer of labor and as the custodian of the policies of labor, employment, and productivity. This is the point at which government is engaging with labor. Every opportunity they have to sit, even when labor is on strike, the avenue for collective bargaining, for sitting round table with government, should not be lost to them. So I am beginning to wonder as to why the labor leadership will insist that they are not going to sit with government until government reverses to. Why do you want to protect a subsidy regime that benefits a tiny minority at the expense of the majority of Nigerians? If we are talking about, and a lot of us are looking at this situation with some concern. If you're talking about labor rising up to defend suffering, there was a point in time in the history of this recent politics that we had the worst, the most excruciating policy situation that caused so much hardship and death when currencies were withdrawn from circulation and people suffered. I know how much I had to go through. My family was in hospital. I could not get the resources, and almost all the networks for transfers and other online transactions in the banks had collapsed. The major banks collapsed. We had difficulty. We could not even pay for drugs. We could not pay for food. We all suffered. Where was the voice of labor at that point in time? That was the time we expected that anybody who thinks he's talking for the people of Nigeria should have spoken. But labor was silent. Labor was campaigning for a political party. So please let us understand that what we are doing, Nigeria is our country. The interests of Nigeria and Nigerians should be our paramount interest. That these things that are happening should be a pointer to us that we have held on to a subsidy regime that had almost led to the collapse of our economy, that nearly made it impossible for us to run government. We should do everything.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're gonna take a break now, and when we come back, we'll also include calls. Please stay with us. Okay, welcome back. And in Nigeria, we know that labor has threatened to go on strike on Wednesday if their demands are not met following a removal of the subsidy on petroleum products in Nigeria, particularly PMS. Now, our guest is Honorable Ahmad Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy in Adamawa State and Public Affairs Analyst. Reverend Dominic has been on the line all through when we were on break. Good morning to you, Reverend Dominic.
Good morning to you, Yori.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Good morning to your guest, Ahmed. Can you hear me?
Yes, he can hear you. Ahmad Sajo.
Yes. Sajo. Yori, I don't want to make it personal. I could have taken to Ahmed personally. Do you know what the reason? The challenge of this governance now is quite enormous. And if his own brother, let me use this word, if his own brother former President Muhammad Buhari dodged subsidy for 8 years.
Hello, Reverend Dominic? I think we lost Reverend Dominic there. But I have no idea what he was going to say, but from the cadence, it looks as if he was going to say, nothing was done in the last administration. It's all now on top of this administration. I don't know. I don't know where he was going to go. But you heard the little that we were able to receive of that particular call. Would you like to take it from there, that unfairly things are being packed on this administration, whereas not very much was done in the last administration towards smoothing the tracks for this?
Well, let me start by saying, personally, I am very, very proud and encouraged by the way President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is taking off. If he had said he would remove subsidy on assumption of office, and he assumes office and does not remove subsidy, then he would have started on a point of deception. But he said, I will remove subsidy. Nigerians trusted that he will do that and voted for him. And not only him, but like I said, all the other major presidential candidates said they will remove subsidy. On the strength of that, Nigerians voted for him. And the first thing he did is to say he is removing the subsidy. I think we've come to the era where everything the leadership said during the campaigns will be the things that the leadership will do on assumption of office. And we're looking at it. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, some of the major things he said during his inaugural address was that he will remove subsidy, he will remove the dual exchange rate, he will address multiple taxation of citizens, especially at the lower level. These are issues that he had mentioned that he was going to do. And he has already started doing them. And so we want to take him on his words. He has started with the most difficult one. The most difficult one is actually the removal of subsidy, because there will be a lot of blackmails and a lot of pushbacks. But he has said, look, I have developed sufficient political will as your leader to do what is right. And what is right may be hurtful, but that is what is right. And postponing what is right may be more hurtful in the future than doing it
I beg
now.
your pardon for interjecting.
So why can't we just...
Fidel has called in
take
from
it?
Owerri. I'm so sorry, but Fidel has called in from Owerri too. Good morning, Fidel.
Thank you very much. I want to advise the Nigerian Labour Congress not to back out from the negotiations. Strikes are no longer in vogue, for they do nobody any good. If you are protecting the people genuinely and you want to use strike to block everywhere, to cause more problems, I mean, it's not proper. It will make Nigerians, those you are protecting, to suffer more. Rather, let there, just like TVC has done, let there be further negotiations and then map out strategies to alleviate the sufferings that might come as a result of the removal of the subsidy. Come out with issues like effective mass transit system, improvement in the welfare and salaries of the workers, making sure that even there are long-term plans to build more artisanal refineries and also modular refineries. And above all, come out with measures that will assuage the sufferings of the people in the interest of peace and unity. It is better for us to sacrifice a little and enjoy forever. Now that the subsidy is here, let us look for ways of living with it. Thank you and God bless you. I'm Fidel Onyeneke.
Thank you very much for calling in, Fidel. Honorable Sergio, showing your, path that, look, everybody knows that this subsidy thing is odious, especially because it is, well, most Nigerians think dishonest. And as you've just said, benefiting just a few at the expense of the tens of millions of Nigerians. Now, one is just hoping that Labour will come to see it for what it is. And in any case, Mr. Ajero, he's a very well-informed person. He's a journalist, or was a journalist before moving over there. So he knows the score. The worry now is, well, why is Labour not cutting Nigeria some slack? Everything that you've spoken about can be done, will be attempted. and will be done within the resources available. It has been said very, very clearly that Nigeria simply doesn't have the money with which to pay. So if it's not to make the Tinubu administration look bad on the dawn of its administration, Labour is going to have to, conduct itself in a way where people will see that without compromising your principles, you're really staying on Labour issues. But in the meantime, Mazi Okorafo has called in from Arochukwu. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, our guest, Mazi Okorafo from Arochukwu. You see, it is not issue of Labour or no Labour. The question is this. The Nigerian Labour should be talking about the variables, the indices that will make workers balance. Strike or no strike, that's a previous Labour stories come back to square one. Before you talk, you are not missing everything, just scatter the same. But the thing is this. I would suggest to Nigerian Labour Congress, agree that the economy is fighting seriously from the Kanhare. They should look into all this casual work and this underemployment and underemployment for the Nigerian youth. It is very, very disheartening that in Nigeria we have labor unions, that somebody will go to work by 7 a.m. or 8. He or she will close around 6 or 7 or 8. He or she will be paid 8,000 naira or 10,000 naira a month. 30 days, from 31 days. Labour have not even looked at them. Now, Nigerian Labour, there's nothing wrong for them. But the question is that let Labour and the government sit down. If Labour and government will arrive, fine. You can shift the issue of subsidy maybe till August. Let the Labour within the same now find a solution and how to. It is not a question of increasing the salary. Salary is okay, but the question is that the variables I'm talking about, let's look at the full situation. 80% or 90% of Nigerians that go to work, what they are doing is to make sure they feed their children, pay their school fees, take medical care there, and get good accommodation and transportation. These 5 key points or key factors, all those things are still hanging in Nigeria. And we have Nigerian Labour Congress. They have not asked about tractors the governors collected, federal government. They are not even talking about all those IDPs in different locations. They are not even talking about Nigerian students. How do they cope? 90% of primary schools in Nigeria, 36 degrees of water, they are on strike. Nigerian Labour close their eyes. And we have workers that work for pension and Nigerian Labour to see that. Labour, there's nothing wrong for the strike, whether strike or no strike. But see that we have to find solutions to the indices and the variables now or never. Good morning, Mazo Prapo, calling from Arochukwu.
Thank you very much. Well, Honorable Sergio, as you can see, most of the callers, are,
very interesting.
Yes, because...
Yeah, very. Can I ask a few questions too, just to the public?
Yes.
The first thing is that, look, let me ask this question. There are many states that have not been paying salaries. No, we are not talking about even an increase in salary, but paying salaries at all. Labour had kept quiet all this while. There was a time we knew that the federal government of this country took out part of its own money, gave to Labour to establish a mass transit program to help workers reduce their difficulties in transportation. Where are those mass transit buses? They are all gone. They were supposed to run as a business by the labor unions themselves. All the buses are gone. There is no accountability. Nobody is talking to anybody about it. Now, every time Labour will wake up and say, we go on strike, we go on strike. Government says, let's sit down and discuss under the doctrine of collective bargaining. They're busy talking about, the petrol prices must go back, otherwise they will go on strike. If they go on this strike, I am the one telling you, they go on this strike, there is going to be rebellion because there are many issues. Even Mazi Okafor had raised a number of issues. If Labour believes that it is a vanguard for the protection of the rights of ordinary people in Nigeria, there are many issues that affect the ordinary people that Labour keeps quiet about. It's not just and this petroleum subsidy issue is an issue that is actually beneficial to a tiny minority, to people who are getting richer at the expense of the country. So why would Labour be protecting?
One more caller. Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm very sorry to interrupt you. While we are suffering.
I know there's a delay. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I know there's a delay, but Ellis in Jos called in as well. Good morning, Ellis. Did I get the name right? Ellis in Jos. Ellis? Okay. Well, maybe it's a technical thing. Ellis had called in from Jos, and we were waiting to put him on. So, as we were saying, Honorable Sadio, there are those now who are beginning to say that Labour is, I mean, I don't know what the evidence is, but and you have alluded to it, that look, if it's a Labour organization, not a political party, because to some, the way they look at it is that the position of Labour is almost as if they were politicking. But Labour itself, I have heard Labour, under, Comrade Ajero say that, no, nothing like that. But if you are as uncompromising as they appear to be right now, in spite of the fact that President Tinubu, what you brought up, we have heard that it has always been on President Tinubu's mind, nominally, this whole matter about reviewing the minimum wage. It certainly, the minimum wage can't take you home. Everybody knows that and has been so for a while. Now, President Tinubu has said that he's going to address that. But Labour seems not, when I say Labour, particularly the NLC, seems not to be interested in any kind of talk. TUC itself, well, even TUC, they are saying more or less the same thing, but at least they are showing up for meetings, which goes back to the point you made, Honorable Sadio, that you must always keep that door open, be able to sit around a table and, do a collective bargaining sort of a thing. So one just hopes that Labour can see its way to, not being a clog in the wheel of progress, especially this early. People have gone ahead, as you must have heard, of saying that Labour's intention, not that I am saying it, I'm simply reporting what is being said, Labour's intention is to, give the Tinubu administration unnecessary trouble at the beginning, which they see as a continuation of politicizing the campaigning and politicking.
So let's go over to history. At a certain point in time in this country, we only had one. When Adams Oshimole was president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, we only had one Labour Center. We did not have another Labour Center like we now have NLC and TUC. What brought about the second Labour Center is to some extent this kind of attitude of the NLC leadership, that even when there is a need to sit down round table in a collective bargaining situation, Labour says, no, we have already made our position and we are not going to negotiate with you as a government. It's not possible. First and foremost, we have a government. Whether somebody likes it or not, whether somebody accepts the leadership of the country presently or not, we have a government, a bona fide government, illegal government, and a government that is under Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So we have to accept that. If the people we are in a political cohort with do not accept the election of Bola Tinubu, that has nothing to do with the fact that he is the de facto and the de jure leader of the country presently. So we have to accord the government its rightful place as the custodian of our labor laws, and when the government calls you for collective bargaining, for discussion, for dialogue on an issue, it becomes politics for you to say, I'm not going to do it. It's no longer labor.
Let me bring in Masur. I beg your pardon, sir. Let me bring in Masur, who has called in from Ajah in Lagos. Good morning, Masur.
Good morning, sir.
Please go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was watching the program this morning, and I was calling from Ajah in Lagos. Good morning, Masur. Good morning, sir. Yeah, I really appreciate your program.
Please continue. Don't stop.
I appreciate your program. Yeah, I think there's an issue, the way we address.
Mansour? And first of all, well, he only had the chance to tell us how much he was enjoying our conversation and was then going to add to it. Meanwhile, his time was up. But you were saying, Honorable Sergio, that Labour seems to be in need of great care lest it be seen as politicking, which the president of Labour has said is not the case. He said that that is not the case, that all he's doing is looking out for the rights of workers and succor for workers. But there must be a way you go about it, because many people have been saying that Labour, Mazi Okorofo has called in, Reverend Dominic has called in, all of them saying that, look, the things that Labour should have been speaking about, it didn't in the recent past. But now that it is adamant on this point is where it could do a lot better. And I think that is what you were just saying yourself, that we all belong in Nigeria, and Nigeria belongs to all of us, and that should be our focus. It doesn't appear, I think you are sort of insinuating that Labour is seeing it quite like that at the moment.
I think we should harp on that seriously. Nigeria is our country. Our interest is our country. Our people, you know, we have about 133 million people that are said to be within the poverty bracket. That should be our major concern. How do we pull people out of poverty? And you cannot pull people out of poverty without addressing the social gap that exists. The rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. That is our major concern now.
Okay, sorry to interrupt yet again. I'm so sorry, sir. It's an interactive program, and Alhaji Subaya has called in this time. Good morning, Alhaji.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayori. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Ayori, let me go straight away. Let Nigeria understand that subsidy is normal. I hope you are listening to me, Mr. Ayori.
We can hear you.
Yes, subsidy is normal. You see, but this one is not subsidy. This one is scam. You see, and enough is enough from some cabal, some section of people, swallowing our commonwealth. We should resist it. Enough is enough. Mr. Ayori, you remember the issue of Farouk those days? It's this same particular, subsidy. So you see, look, Nigerians, we should put a stop to this. What I'm pleased, appealing to our president. We are ready to endure, for this particular issue. But he should give us a kind of assurance. Whatever money accrue to this particular subsidy within 6 months, our Nigerian refiners should come working. Even if it is one, it should come on spring. That is our expectation. And more so, I want to challenge the NLC. What are they looking for? You see, they should not be selfish with their approach. You see, they are in Nigeria, throughout President Muhammadu Buhari 8 years. Why can't they stand by their feet? That they want, one of our refineries to come on spring. What, are they not part of it? Ajero himself is part of Wabara. He's there. 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari on government. They didn't even stand by their feet to say, one of our refineries to work.
Indeed. I want to thank you very much, Alhaji Subaya. Honorable Sergio, we've just about run out of time. But what the gentleman who called in last just said, which is that, look, as uncomfortable as it is, because they don't see it as a scam, they don't see it as subsidy, but as a scam, we're ready to take it off. We're ready to bear it. Now, this, quite frankly, it's a bit strange that Nigerians are saying this, because it's not going to be easy at all. But you have more than a few people committing that we will put our shoulder to the wheel. I think that itself speaks volumes about the resolve of the Nigerian people to power through this. So I suppose that's we can be optimistic that one way or the other, Labour will come around and we'll move forward, and we won't be paying this pretty penny that is being paid into the pockets of a few. In conclusion, Honorable Ahmed Sajo, in conclusion.
Yeah. Do you want to know that? Do you want any proof that this whole subsidy thing is a criminal scam? People who bought fuel that was supposedly subsidized, The moment the president mentioned commitment to end subsidy, they closed down their petrol stations and jacked up prices to 200, 300, 500 times of the fuel that they were supposed to have bought at a subsidized rate. So look, these people that are, there is no way you can satisfy them except what has been done. Labor, I am still challenging labor. There are workers who have been receiving salary for the past 20 or more years, and they are receiving this salary and they are supposedly working in the refineries. Those refineries are not working. There is budget every year. If you go to the budget office, you will see every year there are budgets for turnaround maintenance of these refineries. There are workers there, Nigerian workers, that are supposed to be the engineers to handle this turnaround maintenance. These maintenance are not yielded anything. What are these workers telling us? That the labor movement is trying to turn itself into a political tool. If it does not,
we're going to have to leave it there. I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I understand you, and I believe all our viewers do, even though I'm interjecting. So sorry about that, but the exigencies of TV production. So sorry about that. Ahmed Sajo, we've come to the end of time on this program. Former Commissioner for Information and Strategy at Adamawa State and Public Affairs Analyst. Our deep appreciation goes out to you for making time for us this morning. So that's our program today. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folare. Bye-bye for now.